Last round at Monza was absolute chaos. We had a KTM winning both races, a Ginetta on the podium, and Tom Bryant got his first ever RCI win. Well, today we're here at Silverstone for the penultimate round of the Thursday Championship, and we expect to see plenty of fighting. Hello everyone, welcome back to the GT4 and the BMW Cup Car Championship. I'm Tim Peck, joined today by Austin Devonshire and Ted Edwards on the broadcast. Austin, last week we saw a lot of the fighting on the track. Do we see more of that this week here?
I mean, I'd be very surprised if not. Very quick. Some of our quicker drivers out tonight that we have seen throughout the championship. Verstappen currently sitting in P1 in practice, a full eighth of a second in front of Fisher. Difficult to say whether that pace will translate into race pace, but actually I've just noticed Lilith actually sitting in third as well in this. Obviously, it's different classes too. So Lilith in silver class amongst the pros there. So you can never take practice times for gospel. Different fuel loads, different strategies. No, I to answer the question, Tim, I do feel like we will see some of that racing tonight.
Yeah, I think we're set for a good one, and we'll look at the standings properly after we've gone into qualifying here in a minute and finished that. But Verstappen currently has a nice hearty lead in the championship, and they're going to be looking to extend that further today, really, so that they can stay ahead of Fisher and Foch going into the final round. But into qualifying now, we have 20-minute qualifying sessions split into two 10-minute sessions. First things first is, I'm going to get this wrong because I always do, the BMWs are going to go out and set their fastest time on the track. There's the BMW Cup cars. They have 10 minutes, and then after their 10 minutes, they will come back into the pit lane, and the GT4s go out and then set their fastest laps. They have 10 minutes as well, and we've got a BMW and a GT4 out on the track currently at the moment.
Yeah, we've seen this before in the past here at RCI. We do have the multi-class qualifying, and as Tim, you just said, the BMWs do go out first. So it's not entirely certain why we're seeing the GT4 pulling off there, and just realizing their mistake obviously can carry a hefty penalty if the stewards get wind of that. But I don't believe we have live stewarding tonight. So no, BMWs, they are out, and it will be Hellman taking the clear air to start off qualifying. 10 minutes, not a lot of time around here at Silverstone. Very long track, Tim.
Yeah, it's a very long track, and especially with these cup cars, they're very slow. They have the slowest lap times out of any car in the game as well. So realistically here, they're only going to get in probably 3 chances at a good lap, if that here. So what all these drivers need to do is make sure they go out and they set that fastest time possible and try not to mess up, because if you invalidate one of your laps, that could be your only shot at getting a high position here in quali.
That's it. I mean, we saw this last week as well. We spoke about it with the banker lap being so important. If you run a bit wide and you lose that banker lap, then you lose that guaranteed sort of that guaranteed time on the board, which that could be all that you get in the best of circumstances, as we see Healy just flicking it through into Abbey. Jamie Hunt, one of the only AM class M2s that we have at the moment as well, going through. This is going down through Stowe. Keeping it very, very neat and tidy, and according to my Delta, they're still on their outlap. So, cars just warming the tyres up again. The BMW and tyres, Tim. Name a better combo.
Well, I was actually going to say, surprisingly, we did not talk about the tyres a lot last week, but I imagine we will be talking about them quite a bit this week. And I was finding it funny there. You mentioned that Hunt was still on their outlap. I too thought that this was their fast lap as well, before remembering that these are only the BMW M2 Cup cars. They haven't had a chance to get around the track yet. These guys are, like we said, they're not going to get a lot of opportunity for pole position. You mentioned that we only have 2 AM drivers in this class right now, which is Jamie Hunt and Marshall. Well, we did last week. We had Dominicus, who was in the AM class. They were promoted after an absolutely amazing performance at Monza, and I wouldn't be surprised if after this championship has ended, we see a couple of people across all of the classes getting some promotions, Austin, because there's been quite a lot of good performance. I'd say this championship, we've seen a lot of people really improving in their driving.
Yeah, I mean, some of these people, obviously, we speak about the community a lot, in the ACC community. It is quite small, and, you do see a few names, going from series to series. And I've known some of these guys, like Azure and Carlisle, for example, with Goat and Carlisle. I've known them for a little while now, and I've seen them improve to such a degree that maybe relatively recently, Silver would have been their class. But in the case of Azure, for sure, we've seen Azure like fighting with the pros and keeping it up there. So yeah, I could definitely see some class shifts coming.
Yeah, I'd agree. There's a lot of people that really could do with a promotion here, and just like they've really improved. Like we said, looking at chat now, Wolf Motorsport said, "Phew, I made it. You certainly did make it. Bang on time as well. Here for qualifying to see it through." Katrina Scott says hello. Olivier says hey, and John Daly sends, I believe that's a peace up sign in the chat as well. So hello to all of you in the chat, and welcome back to Thursdays. It feels, honestly, I was sitting at work today, I was just sitting in my chair, Austin, and I thought, you know what? It feels like it's been ages since we did a Thursday. It's only been a week, but that race was so chaotic, and there was so much fighting that it just feels like it was ages ago now.
I know. I had the exact same thought, but no. I mean, hopefully, this race is as chaotic in the best way. I mean, it's a much wider circuit, much longer circuit, but it does have some great opportunities as well. There's some heavy braking zones, there's fast corners, and like Monza, we said it had a little bit of everything. So does Silverstone. It's a great test track for any kind of car, really. And I feel like this is going to be the sort of track that really kind of it really brings the championships down to driver skill as opposed to the car difference.
Yeah, there's a lot of places on this track where it really comes down to, like you said, the driver's skill and how they handle particular corners. There's quite a lot of places here where you can go for moves down the inside, and you can even like do a lot of overtaking. There's 3 really long straights here where overtaking is possible. Of course, that doesn't really stand for the M2 Cup cars, but more for the GT4s there. That like there are straights where it can happen, and there's also a lot of corners where if you get that inside line, you can really make a move happen, push someone wide here. So there's a lot of variability in this track. I'm a firm believer, I mean, I'm British, so I'm biased, but I'm a firm believer that Silverstone is one of the better tracks on the calendar just because it has that variety amongst it. And yeah, like I was saying, honestly, I'm excited to see how today turns out. My biggest thing, though, is what I've been saying this whole championship so far is that these BMW M2 Cup cars, they really struggle to use the slipstream, and they really don't overtake on the straights. So I imagine a lot of the fighting for them is going to come in some of the faster corners. I'm thinking Copse, Stowe here, anywhere where there's quite a fast swinging right-hander, I imagine is where a lot of these Cup cars are going to have to try and make the overtakes happen.
Yeah, potentially. On the contrast, I think it's going to be corners like here, to see Ripper come through Vale. I think Vale's going to be a really important corner for these guys because just being able to outbrake, and then the Vale as well, the way the track kind of flows, it opens up the potential for a switchback. You can have the inside line into one corner, but then before you know it, you then switch to the outside, and the car on the inside could then flick through. Same going through Loop, and even the breaking point down to Brooklands. It's one of those corners. There's so many lines through it that are equally as fast as the other. Sometimes I feel that you can make a lot of difference there.
Well, we currently have Healy sitting on pole. They have a time of 2:18.7. Bock is currently up on their lap time. They're sitting currently about 4 tenths behind Healy. So they're hoping that they can get a couple of tenths in here. And hopefully when they cross the line in the second, that might be enough here to put them on pole. We're about to find out because they're coming up to the line now. Dominicus, who was in AM last race, was promoted, is currently sitting in 3rd place as well. Bock puts himself on pole with a 2:18.4, and Healy returns the favour by going with a 2:18.3. So we have a very tight fight for first in the BMWs at the moment.
Yeah, that's what, 0.006 of a second there. So that's not not a lot of time at all. As we have Ripper, I think has just crossed line, heading down into Copse corner now, sticking into P4. Provisionally, still 3 minutes of the session remaining, so still enough time for at least one more lap for some of these guys. And well, I don't think this is going to be the final order, and I don't think that Box will be going down without a fight.
I agree, and something I've just noticed as well is there's a couple of people out on track haven't set a lap time yet. This is one of them, Benjamin Heilman, usually one of the front runners in this class, has not yet set a lap time, and I'm wondering, because it's not just Benjamin, actually Waldeck has set their lap now, that starts them in 6th, but I was going to say, Austin, I'm wondering here, is the track limits going to provide a problem, especially in qualifying? Have they been invalidating their laps, or have they just made a mess up and not been able to get the lap time they wanted in?
Well, the last time I saw Avayo and Stewie was on their flying lap, pulling the car off onto the gravel to reset back to pits. So I'm wondering if they made a mistake, maybe with tire pressures or something to that effect. But no, I'm not entirely certain, but they're going to have to act quick if they do want a lap in. This is, this goes back to exactly what we were talking about. You fail to get a banker in, you risk not getting a lap in at all. And speaking of getting a lap in, there we go. That's Stu crossing the line, and that's 1.6 seconds behind Healy. So you say one of the front runners, but a little bit off the pace here.
Yeah, and I thought your point there was interesting about getting the lap time in, because you said that Harman went wide coming out one of the corners, they pulled into the gravel, returned to the pit. If that's the case, then that means they were already into a lap at some point, and whether they returned to the pits because they messed up the corner and they thought, what, should put on a fresher set of tyres, or whether they returned to the pits because maybe they made a mess up with the setup or something. That's a lot of time they have now wasted out on track and then returning to the pits, doing another outlap again. So maybe that's Holman's first attempt at a lap, and like you said, it needs to be fast if they want to be fighting at the front like they have been the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, it just needs to give that a little bit more. We've got Marco Ripper here coming across the line, currently 4/10 up on their delta. So is this going to be enough for P3? It is. That will be enough for provisional P3. But Raphael Tuel also up on their delta, coming through Luffield, about to cross the line. Where will they come out? We're about to find out, guys, and there we go, that's in P4, so Dominicus moving down into P5, still in pit, so will not have the opportunity to do another lap.
Here comes Waldecker. They are 5/10 up on their time. This will be enough to move them up into P3 if they hold it together. Coming across the line, Waldecker is going to secure a time. They're going to lose 1/10 though as they approach the line, and that will put them in P4 just behind Marco Ripper. And like you said, Dominicus, who was at one point sitting in P3, has fallen all the way down to 6th, and they could be falling further as we watch Harman now approaching the final set of corners.
Yeah, so coming through Brooklands now on the run to Luffield, using all of the inside curb there, and surprising to see that's not an invalidation, using the brakes just to pin the front of the car down into the tarmac to help the turning circle. 9/10 up on their delta, coming out of Luffield, again coming down to the start finish line, coming through Woodcut. Where will they come? 9/10 up. That will put them into P3. P3 in the M2 Cup class, and that will be the end of the BMW's qualifying session.
That was the lap that Harman had been looking for there, and it pushes down Dominicus even further. So it echoes exactly what you were saying at the beginning of qualifying, Austin, and that is, the time you've got on the board, it's not going to stand. You need to be consistently improving that lap time, because that order just kept reshuffling at the end there. I think most of the field of M2s improved their lap time by a significant amount. So that is what we see in this M2 Cup car, Tony. And now it's the GT4's turn. And realistically here, who we're looking at front runners is Fischer, Verstappen, Boardman. But I say this every week, Austin, there's a lot of big names here, and realistically, pole could go anyone's way right now.
It really could. I mean, Fischer, amazingly quick throughout the last couple of races we've had. Boardman always up there, always a name that you see on the scoreboard, and you just know that the history of that driver, the things they've achieved, the races they've the seasons that they've raced, not just with us but with other championships as well. The experience that comes behind a lot of these guys. Yeah, tonight's gonna be great, Tim. Looking at Machi now coming down into Stowe as the GT4s complete their outlaps.
Yeah, a bit far behind is Bart currently in the number 5 car. Wondering if they were doing some last-minute changes to their setup, or they just fancied a lot of fresh air ahead of them. You can see everyone else bunched up, though, coming through the final corner now, and they've just completed their outlap. So now all of them will be moving on to their fastest lap, and we're seeing how quickly they can do it, really. Currently leading the pack is Kui in, I believe, a Chevrolet. Yes, they're in the Chevrolet right now, and we're going to see just how fast this car manages to handle the track. Honestly, though, looking back at how this car's performed across the championship and then how the Chevrolets performed in other championships, I'd say this is one of the more disappointing performances, Austin. Not Quiz, but just the car as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, the car has its strengths in corner exit. It can gain speed very, very quickly, but the top end speed of which it does gain is very limited. It's very, you can hear it in the gear ratios. It's a very long ratioed car. So chasing fourth, going into fifth, going into sixth. We don't quite reach the top end of fifth, going down towards Stowe there, and that can really hold the car back. As quick as it is on the corner exit, it does hold itself back in terms of top end speed, and that is where on a track like Silverstone, where you've got Wellington Straight, Hanger Straight, and the run down to Cox, it's just not really going to have the pace potentially tonight.
Just heard from Benjamin Heilman that apparently for their first lap they were on traction control 2. They forgot to turn it down, which is why their first lap was significantly off the pace of everyone else's. And I'm wondering if they mean the lap where they returned to the pits on, or they mean the lap where they did do it and then they were about 1.6 seconds off the pace and improved it massively. Either way, though, putting themselves into that top 3 is a significant start for them, because they were someone that was running at the front of this championship. Now, I believe they still are, because we have a drop round, Austin. But last week they didn't show up, which means they're automatically going to score 0 points that week, and that will count as their drop round. Now, for those of you at home who don't know how the drop round works, basically there are 5 races in the championship, and what we do is we only count points for 4 of them. Those are your top scoring 4 rounds, and then there's one round where we use as a drop round. We take away all the points for it, and it just helps to balance the field a bit more. If people need that sign-out race where they can't make it because they've got other commitments, then they can drop out and come back the next week and not worry about being out of the championship completely. But it does mean for people like Benjamin Harmon, who used it because they did have to sign out, they don't get that extra round of, let's say Fisher today goes out and has a bad result. That's fine. Fisher doesn't have to worry about that. It's a bad result. It'll be dropped in the drop round. Harmon doesn't get that luxury, and I know it's the same for quite a lot of the drivers here who have used a drop round this championship specifically so that they didn't have to attend one race.
But this is the interesting thing about strategic drop rounds, though, is that they can start adding that extra pressure, and will we see behaviors come out on track? I'm not going to say desperate, but behaviors, just. The more aggressive racing, shall we say, and I'm wondering if that will influence some of the racing that we'll see.
Yeah, I think it will, and it makes things a lot closer, because you don't necessarily know when your best performance is going to come out. So you could be 4 rounds into the championship, and you could basically go into that final race not knowing how you're going to perform. If you're going to have a really bad race and you already know the points you're finishing that championship with, whereas if you have your best race yet and somehow appear in first place, maybe 4 or 5 places above you normally place, that could be an amazing round for you to really put in some points. And it, like you said, it just comes down to, at the end of the day, it makes the championship that bit closer and a lot of the fighting, because it gives you options, and you can be really tactical about where you use that drop round.
Yeah, as you said, options I think is the key word there. There's looking at Svenchek now, again, in the GT4, hasn't set a time just yet. Only 3 minutes of qualifying left, so very similar situation at the moment to what we saw Stewie in during the M2 class. 24 Svenchek, trying to find them on my timesheet, and I cannot seem to see this. I'm not sure if they're up or down on their delta, but we're about to find out as we're rounding Luffield, heading towards Woodcote to cross the line.
Well, like you said, there's a couple of cars here at the bottom of the GT4 that haven't set a time yet, and they're going to want to put at least some sort of lap in just so they can start ahead of the M2 Cup cars. Because right now, all of them will be starting from the back end. Wow, Svenchik sets the fastest lap of the session, quickly then beaten out by Fisher, who sets a 2:11.0. Boardman also slots in with a 2:11.3. Just behind it, Racer comes in as well. They put themselves in 3rd place, and it looks like we're going to have a repeat of what we've just seen with the M2s.
It definitely seems that way, Tim. And the one person who will not want to see this right now is, I believe, Verstappen. As far as I remember, Verstappen is actually P2 in the overall championship right now. Bart Matcher again up on their delta, coming around Luffield, about to cross the line. Once they round Woodcut Corner, I mean, where are they going to come up? Is it going to be enough to improve? We're about to find out, and no, it will not. They're quicker than the last lap, but still about 4/10 behind Borodai and the 98 BMW.
There's a big old gap there. Well, there was a big old gap there between 6th and 7th. Now Bart has closed that gap a little bit with their last lap, but still, like you said, they need to put in much more pace if they want to actually improve their position. Here comes Tom Watts in the Alpine. They've returned to Silverstone after using Monza as their drop round. Let's see what the Alpine can do round here. They're about to set their first lap of the session with just 1 minute left to go. So actually, this might be their second to last. Tom Watts slots in the time, 1.8 seconds off the pace. That will be good enough for the top 10, but not much more than that. Here comes Kui, who was one of the first people out on the track, only just setting their time. And again, 1 second off the pace will be enough to put them up in 8th. And I've got to say, Austin, there are a lot of people struggling here to get in some quick times.
Yeah, I think that was it Mathieu who had the idea to sort of hang back and have that clear end. Maybe that was the right call to do. Obviously, leading their provisional pole in silver class right now by about 3/10 on his year goat. Verstappen currently in P5 at the 747 Aston Martin of Ramsey Luffield again up on their delta by 6/10 or so. So looking at provisional pole here, potentially a minute of the session left to go, about to cross the line, and that is P2, just under 0.04 of a second off of Fisher.
Verstappen, currently the front runner in the championship. Fisher and Boardman have been fighting him every single race so far. We've seen plenty of scraps between those three, and currently they are holding the top 3 slots as we get towards the end of qualifying here. Just 34 seconds left to set the fastest time. Borodai crossing the line is in 5th place currently. Their usual front runner too. Eraser and Svenchik, Daly and Bart all used to being towards the front of the pack. So I'd say all the way down to 8th, Austin, there are absolutely no surprises here. These are the people that I expect to see at the top of their game today.
I am 100% with you, and I mean, Tom Watts as well in the 942. The Alpine should be very quick. Again, up on their delta. I mean, this car should be very quick in the final sector here at Silverstone. Alpine, again, it's one of those cars not so great in a straight line, but around the corners, it's so agile, and obviously the road car very, very light as well. So it's a great base to work from to make a racing car in the 942. Coming around Woodcut now, about to cross the line. Where will they come out? And that will be P8. So again, another car within the top 9, within a second of P1.
And that is a brilliant improvement from Watts. They were really starting to slip down. I think they were 13th before they improved to P8 there, and knocking a second off their time got them back up into that top 10. Well, the final cars are just coming across the line. Now they're setting the last lap that they're going to have a chance to do. And we've talked about how 10 minutes is not a long time, where you can see that it really isn't. I'm sure a lot of these people would have loved to have extended this qualifying session a bit longer, because I think pretty much every car only got about 2 good laps in there, and everyone else was really just struggling to keep it on the track. That seemed like there were a lot of invalid laps coming through in that session, Austin.
No, it seems that way, and obviously you got tracks like Stowe and Corps, with a wide runoff area, so it's very, very easy to sort of push the car, very fast corners as well. Very easy to push the car just a little bit too far across the track limits and pick up the track limits warning. And I'm wondering, Tim, if we're going to see that during the race. Obviously, with Monza we saw a few drive-throughs. At Paul Ricard we saw a few drive-throughs. So I'm wondering if tonight it's going to be any different.
Monza was very much decided as well, with a lot of drive-throughs. Plenty of the leaders and the front runners actually ended up getting a drive-through at some point in Monza. So I agree. I think we could see a couple of drive-throughs today, and I think warnings is definitely going to come into it. Of course, we don't know what the weather's going to be like at the moment either. As Bart approaches the line, they're currently 2 tenths up on their time. That'll be enough to bunny hop Jordan Daly and Tom Watts up into 7th place, and they managed to do it as well. Bart crosses the line, pushes himself up in 7th. Fisher will be on pole position for the GT4s. Verstappen in 2nd and Boardman will round out the top 3. Looking at the BMW M2s, Healy will be on pole, Bock will be in 2nd, and Benjamin Harmon with a final lap will be up there in 3rd place. And looking back on that session, Austin, just going back to what I was saying, that was a fairly dry session, but most of the track was green. That's because practice, it was raining. And that's the thing, the weather today could be very, very variable.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's always the case with these championships, isn't it? You never know what the weather is going to do next until we actually load into the server and well, as I said already in the server, but until like the session actually starts. So no, again, how is that going to affect strategy? We thought last week, weather came into play as well, so it's going to be an interesting one.
It could be very interesting. Well, we're going to take a look at the standings now and seeing just how this race is going to be with the points as we go towards Silverstone here. The GT4, this is the Pro Class. Christopher Streppen in 1st place with 189 points, significantly over Fisher, who's got 153 points. Foch with 145 points in 3rd. Stevenson in 4th, just 8 points ahead of Andy Boardman, who's currently in 5th. Borodai is 1 point behind Boardman. They have 123 points. They're in 6th. Eraser, 8 points ahead of Quee. They're in 7th. Quee is in 8th. Martin Lawrence currently in 9th with 92 points. And Verstraeten will round out the top 10 with 78 points. Well, here's how the other half of the pros are looking. John Daly is in 11th. They have 57 points. Svenschik has 48 points. They're just 4 points ahead of Tom Watts, and the rest have signed out of the championship. Looking now at the silver class, Azur Goat has 200 points. They're currently in 1st place. That's a 36-point lead over Grim Lilith, who's in 2nd. Adam Carlisle, they're currently in 3rd place with 142 points. And Bart will round out the championship with 96 points. They're currently in 4th. And everyone else has signed out for silver.
Okay, guys, so we've got the TCX cars as well. And joint 1st and 2nd, we've got Benjamin Howman and Michael Ripper on 185 points. In P3, we've got Dom Healy with 166, but close behind, we've got Tom Bryant with 146. Christian Brock will come up into P5, and Andrei Verona coming in P6. Just trailed very, very slightly by Daniel Waldecker. Ardito will be coming into P8, and very closely followed by Raphael Huel with just 10 points behind, but tying with Jan Yeo in P10. Onto the next page, we've got Venti Reshinov now with 52 points, only trailed by 2 points with Eric Arnek in P12, Dominicus in P13, just a few points behind Arnek, so everything to play for there, and Hindley Chamberlain will have signed out of this championship. Onto the AM class cars now. We've got JB Hunt in P1 in AM, followed by Ian Marshall in P2, Jenna Sommer in P3, and the rest of the cars here will have signed out of the championship.
Well, those are how the standings are looking as we go into race 1 here today. Well, let's a quick look at the cars as they begin their outlap for race 1. I genuinely thought for a second that they were actually making moves and going into the first corner at full speed, but they are just out on their outlap here. Fisher leading the group there on pole, for Streppen in 2nd place, Andy Boardman in 3rd, Borodai in 4th, Eraser in 5th, Svenschik in 6th, Bart is currently in 7th, Daly's in 8th, Watts is in 9th, and Quee is currently rounding out the top 10. And I've got to say, that is a very big top 10 with a lot of huge names. Here's Waldecker. They did not click drive, which means they will be starting from the pit lane. And I've got to say, for the BMW M2 Cup car, not as bad, but it's certainly not going to help going into this race. They're going to find themselves trailing behind from the beginning, and they will have a very tall job if they want to climb back up to where they currently are.
Yeah, it's not going to be an easy run at all, and a fairly long pit lane as well, and not the sort of place you want to be caught out from.
Well, here is Jesse Lee. Jesse Lee, who used to commentate with me here on a Thursday. Well, they have now handed over the reins to Austin, and now they like to sit and watch from the standings. This is Jesse Lee. You can see very excited to see how this race at Silverstone is going to turn out. Just completely not even sure what expression to put on their face there. And I'd say they're ready for the weather. You've got their sunglasses on, and it is starting to shine. And that's actually what we were talking about, Austin, just before we went into the standings, is the weather and how that could affect the race. Well, currently, it's looking like it's going to be dry for the entirety of race one here. And that's not something I expected, because when we showed up today in the commentary booth, it was pouring with rain.
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful we've got a bit of an umbrella over us as we're sat in an external booth, away from the track. But yes, no, again, yeah, the weather variance as well. But this is the shorter race, so maybe we could just be treated to a fairly dry sprint race. Conditions are fairly good. Fast track, so not quite optimum. Fairly average temperature with no wind speed. So, for race one could just be a very straightforward race, but race two is where things might get interesting. But let's not curse things too much too soon.
We will try not to curse things. Yeah, of course, you mentioned race two is where things get interesting. It absolutely is. Race two, 40 minutes long, double the points of race one. We're currently going into race one, though, which is 20 minutes long. It is considered the sprint race of this championship, and usually this is where we see people really scrapping it out to get and climb those high places and try and get as many points in as they can.
Yeah, it's a sort of situation when you really need to, and so keeping it consistent, keeping it quick, same as everything, same as every kind of race that you enter, and but no, race two obviously being worth more than race one. Longer race, more at stakes, more to play for.
Yeah, it basically, race one I feel is the learning point. It's where you get to really discover where you are on track, what other people's pace is like around yours, who's a lot more racy, who knows the track best. Whereas race two is, okay, I've got to get my head down here, score as many points as possible, because it's where a lot of the points count. I mean, we've seen people in previous championships, they've done race one and they've won basically every single race one. But in race two, they're not quite getting back up there, and you do really start to notice it. So that's what I'm looking for going into this race. As we're approaching the start-finish line now, is you can try your hardest to get a good position. It's overly not going to affect your race two, though. Of course, it's good to remember that qualifying does dictate the starting positions for both races. And while talking about starting positions, Fischer is about to take off, and they're going to try and stay ahead of Verstappen as they approach the first corner here. The cars are about to cross the line, which means they'll be going full speed towards turn one. You can see Verstappen already very early onto the throttle as they, no, never mind, they're not crossed the line yet. Now they have crossed the line. Verstappen was pushing though to be next to Fischer as much as possible. They're neck and neck going towards T1. Fischer will have the advantage and try to push Verstappen out wide. Verstappen are going to manage to hold it onto the track as they now approach Magnussen and Beckett. So I think that's enough for Verstappen to get into the lead. Boardman lurking behind as well. They're looking to pick up the pieces, but for now, Verstappen has pushed their way through just before Magnussen and Beckett, and Fischer's off the track.
And I don't think they're going to gain a position. Boardman will squeeze through, going through Beckett's onto Chapel. But no, as soon as Verstappen had the inside going into Maggots there, just really committed move on the outside of T1 there. And that is a car. I think that is Tom. Is that Tom Watson, the Alpine? I think that was the Alpine hitting the wall. It was, and I'm not sure what happened there, but it looks like they had help going round. But maybe the car's just got a bit bunched up going down the straight there on corner exit, and Tom Watts paying the price. But you see the damage to the front end of the Alpine, and that's not how you want to start your race at all.
Tom Watts very, very damaged. We can see just what happened in the replay here. Oh, we've actually just caught the tail end of it with them returning to the track, but you can see those are all the BMW M2 Cup cars now passing Tom Watts. So not only have they got a seriously damaged car, but they are right at the back of the field, and they've got a lot of climbing to do if they want to be fighting the GT4s. I'm wondering if it's worth just pitting at this point and seeing. The problem is you can't pit. It's going to take you too long. You're not going to be fighting if you pit, but at the same time, can Tom Watts even climb through the field with that much damage?
I mean, never say never. I mean, 20 minutes, maybe it's not worth pitting. Maybe it's worth just trying to recover a top 10 if you even can. Just carve your way through the cup cars, and that might be the strat. But they have been it's very forgiving when it comes to damage, from what I've heard. So it could actually be okay. There's a car off in the background there. I'm not entirely certain. I believe that was Azure Goat. Looked like one of the black McLarens. Eraser obviously just a little bit behind there as well. This is your go joining in behind, I believe that's the 67 of the Straighten. So in P12, currently second in class. Doesn't look like it hurt them too badly, but will have more positions to catch up on.
Go did have to recover there, and they're currently just trying to reclose that gap to the Porsches ahead. There's a lot of Porsches currently leading them, but here's Jordan Daly currently in a scrap with a racer in the McLaren trying to hold off the BMW behind. And these are two very, very different cars with some very, very different skill sets. The BMW, of course, notorious for its straight line speed, whereas the McLaren is much better under brakes than any other car in this championship. So we're going to see which of these cars can really perform best here as we're actually approaching one of the longest straights. This is a huge opportunity here for Daly to try and get alongside a racer.
Huge opportunity for Fisher too, looking on the outside of Boardman going into Stowe, and it looks like Fisher just being cut off, really pulling up to the back of that Porsche, just about avoiding contact. And but that has also opened Fisher up to an attack from Borodai as well in the 98. You know how good the BMW is on the curbs and how good it is down the straights, as you've just mentioned there, Tim. And it seems to be that Boardman has opened up a bit more of a gap to Fisher, but for how long will that last?
Well, Fisher was looking like one of the people that was going to be running basically in first the entire race there. They had so much pace in both practice and quali, but after an accident going into Magnus and Beckett to send them wide, that will put them down to third. Currently, we have Daly trying to make a move. Now, this is Tom Bryant, never mind, around the outside of Dominicus here. They have managed to pull that off. Dominicus will fall down a pace into 22nd. Tom Bryant, who was on absolute fire last week, picks up a position in the Cup cars.
Yeah, absolutely assertive driving there from Tom, and goes to show it didn't have the inside line, and making a move on the outside of Club. Very, very, I believe that's one of the other Cup cars facing the wrong way. We'll get back to that in just a moment, but actually, no, our neck, that would be our neck facing the wrong way. So I'm wondering if they just had a bit of a moment. But very, very assertive driving that we saw there from Tom. Very difficult to make a move happen on the outside, but just kind of giving room, standing your ground, and making the position up for it. I mean, it doesn't get much more textbook than that.
Well, I believe the car that was facing the other way was actually this person here, Christian Bock. They were originally running in second place just behind Healy. We're going to have a race replay and see just what happened here. Here's Christian Bock. You can see them coming now into the right hand. He's going to actually touch the rear of Arnek there, I believe. And then I think they're slowing down there to let them all back through. So not an ideal situation for Bock. That will find them towards the back of the field. Here's Heilmann, who originally started this race in third in class. They find themselves in fourth and about a second off Hub ahead.
Yeah, obviously something has happened along the way that we appear to have missed here from the booth. But no, Heilmann has dropped down the order, and I'd imagine, obviously, it's not live streamed at this race, but it will be looked at the end. I'd imagine that will be something that lands across the stewarding desk, because that was a pretty hefty tap from behind.
Yeah, of course, this race, like you just said, it's not live shooted. It's all done afterwards with reports. But that doesn't mean that penalties can't happen in a race, but it will be given by the game. That means drive-through limits is something to look out for here, because you may get a drive-through penalty. If you cut the track 4 times, you'll receive a drive-through, which I believe if you don't serve, turns into a stop and go. And if you don't serve it before the end of the race, it turns into a 15-second penalty. So it's something we saw happening in qualifying. There are a lot of people invalidating their laps. Like you said, track limits could play a huge part in today's race.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be very surprised if it doesn't. So it hasn't reared its ugly head just yet, with 6 minutes into the race, 14 minutes to go. Replay of Azure here. I believe that's on Grim Lilith. Just kind of moved into a gap that just was closing up there into Brooklands. And this is what I was saying at the start here, Tim, that there's so many lines through Brooklands. You can try to late apex it and then try to get the early apex into actually no, that wasn't Brooklands, that was into the loop. So again, a very wide part of track, very a lot of lines through that particular way, and it's very easy to get caught out around other cars taking different lines, and I think that might be what just happened there.
Fisher still trying to chase down Andy Boardman here. You can see Boardman has a bit of a gap, which will help them to defend from Fisher, who can't seem to close it enough to be able to get alongside. But as we approach Maggots and Beckett's now, Fisher looks significantly closer than they did before. If they can keep this gap tight coming out of the exit of Beckett's here, they will have a nice lot of slipstream going down the straight towards the fast right hand, and you can see Fisher now almost touching the rear of the number 69 Porsche. But it looks like Boardman has a much better exit here, and this is going to help them just stay that little bit ahead of Fisher coming into the next corner.
Don't discount that Vito and the Aston. Very strong in a straight line going down towards Stowe. Boardman moving across. You know, again, experience really coming in here, and racecraft. You sort of see there's just the calm defending. There's no erratic maneuvers on either side here from the attack or defense, and Boardman just able to hold their ground, and that's what they need, because Fisher also knows that with a small mistake, that's Borodai with an opportunity to go past too.
And like we've said a lot, this is only a 20-minute race. You don't have a huge opportunity to make mistakes here, because if you make a mistake, find yourself at the back of the field, you do not have a lot of time to recover. And I think that's something that's probably playing on Fisher's mind as well, is when do I go for this move when it's safe? Because you don't have time to recover. Heilman currently looking for a move on Hull ahead, look towards the inside for a second there, but will decide better of it and tuck behind for the next set of tight corners. And this is one of the places where the M2 does excel more. It's definitely in the corners, and it's where you have to make the move happen. We've said it's got to be in a corner, because in the straight, as you can see here, it's not enough power to really do a lot. And even now, Heilman not able to get alongside Hull there.
No, definitely struggling, and you've said it yourself. Your struggles in the slipstream, so it's in the braking zones of the corners, as you say, Tim, and Helen looking to try to go around the outside, not able to really happen, but getting the switch. And this is the switchback I was talking about at the start of the stream here. Just trying to get the tuck into the inside through Aintree, maybe get the run down into Brooklands as well. Going down the Wellington straight now. And again, going through Aintree alongside Hellman's front wheel, alongside Hull's rear wheel, side by side going down into the braking zone of Brooklands. It's going to be a case of who is the braver driver here. And I mean, Hellman squeezing on by, but again, the track very quickly turns again. And then the 921 having the inside.
Any GT4 in that situation is already clear of Hull there, but these cars, the slipstream doesn't matter, and like you said, it's all about the fighting in the corner as well. Who's come out on top? It seems to be Heilman, managing to get that switchback maneuver coming out of the final corner there onto the start-finish straight, and that means Benjamin Heilman will now be leading Hull coming through the first corner here. And I've got to say, that was the showcase of exactly what we've been talking about, Austin. The straight, Heilman literally gained nothing. They had a much better exit onto the straight, and they were still in the exact same place they were by the time they got to the end of it. But it all happens in the corners, and it comes down to, like you said, who is the more daring driver?
Yeah, end of the day, that is entirely it. These cars, it's very different to the GT4s in the fact that they're all the same car. You know, there's no, you know, we talk about car difference a lot here in this championship. You know, how surprised we were when the KTMs took first position at Monza. But no, with the Cup cars, they're all the same. It's the same make, same model, same model class. So, you know, it all comes down to how good the drivers are and how much they're willing to kind of put their elbows out and get by each other in the corners. And I mean, it's great for us because it means we get to see some amazing racing. Fisher once again attempting a move on Boardman, a bit closer this time going down to Brooklands. Will dart to the inside, tries to go for a move, commits to one, but just not quite close enough to make anything happen.
I think that was probably a good part on Boardman's defence there, as well as Fisher recognising that that gap was very quickly closing. Of course, like you said, Fisher moves to the inside to go for the move. Boardman very quickly moves to the inside to cover it as well. And I think Fisher realised that that gap was not going to be there by the time they actually got to the apex. So it was a smart thing to just be a bit hard on the brakes there for Fisher, back out of it. And again, there's 8 minutes left in this race. There's almost 9 minutes basically left in this race. Fisher has time to keep assessing this and try and get a move done a lot closer to the finish line.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, 9 minutes of this race remaining, and you know, there's still time to make something happen. You know, it's one mistake. I mean, Verstappen isn't exactly pulling away from Boardman either. So, you know, one mistake from any of those three, and we could see a change in the order at the top here very, very quickly. And don't discount Borodai, who still is using that BMW to full effect, managing to keep up to the top 3. Just waiting to pounce really. Boardman really pulling up to the back of Verstappen there coming through Stowe. And again, we're talking about track limits. On the exit of Stowe, you've got so much runoff and it's such a fast corner. You can take liberties there, but there's only so many throughout the course of a race.
Yeah, and you have to be careful just how far you push it, because of course a track cut is one thing. Pre-track cuts, you're getting scared, and on that 4th track cut, that is when the drive-through penalty hits. But going back to this fight, Verstappen, Boardman, Fischer, I mean, they've been the talking point of the championship, really, haven't they? Let's go back to Paul Ricard. It's the 2nd round, and these 3 were constantly fighting and switching order for the entire 40-minute feature race. And it looks like we might be about to see that again today, because Fischer getting stuck behind Boardman on lap 1. That has meant that they are really trying to fight their way through here, and you can see those gaps are tiny. Fischer basically pushing Boardman through the corner onto the straight here, and they're surely gonna try and make a move. You can see Boardman already darting to the inside to cover it off. Fischer looking now to go round the outside. They'll have the advantage if they can hold it all the way through into the next corner, and it looks like they'll still be neck and neck. Boardman, of course, is going to push Fischer as much as possible.
Oh,
a little nudge there from Fischer will knock Boardman, of course, and Fischer pushes their way through into 2nd.
Yeah, it looked like Boardman was from the angle we just saw from there. It looked like Boardman just went for a bit of a squeeze on Fischer there, and just maybe squeezed a little too hard. Fischer just holding their ground, going to the track limits and not really giving much more room other than that. But don't discount Boardman looking for another opportunity into Cops. I think that might have been another little tap there as well. Fischer, a little bit of a wiggle from the back of the Aston there. And that little mistake, as we said before, that's Borodai making the move around Boardman into turn 1, taking advantage of Boardman going wide.
Borodai puts himself in that final podium position, still under threat from Boardman, who would like it back as quickly as they can. You can see that Borodai really struggled through Maggots and Beckett's there in the BMW, fell slightly behind of Fischer, who they did have originally a really good run on, but Fischer in the Aston Martin just seemed to handle those corners much better, and that is where I think a lot of these cars are going to be basically extending their advantage here. Is in Maggots and Beckett's, in Village, in those sections where you've got really tight corners, and corners that you just got to keep momentum through. That is where you need to extend your lead. So by the time you get onto the straight, the BMW can't do anything. It can have the fastest top speed in the world for all the driver ahead pairs. But if you've given yourself enough gap, you've saved yourself for one more lap.
That's it. And again, coming down to racecraft as well, Borodai was able to keep up in terms of pace, but will he be able to keep up in terms of position? That's something we'll have to find out in the closing 5.5 minutes of this race. Bart Matcher chasing down Daly there. And again, Silver versus Pro. If Daly can get ahead of, if Matcher can get ahead of Daly, there's no more points on the table. But that's another car's buffer between themselves, and all the way down with Lilith and P11 there as well. So Matcher leading the Silver class by some way.
Matcher could do with a good win here. They're currently sitting 4th in the championship. They could do with the points to really close that gap back up, especially for the final round. Here's Jordan Daly making contact with one of the cars ahead, is absolutely sending it into the back of them. Clearly missed their brake marker here. They've now returned to the pit. So I believe that was Bart that we were just talking about that was trying to fight their way through Daly. But now Bart doesn't have to worry about that, and they're into 5th place overall. And like we said, that's a huge gap to Lilith, who's currently in 2nd, and Bart could really do with a good finish here. Let's just say they're starting to fall a bit behind in their championship. They need these points. They need this 1st place finish to catch back up.
Yeah, they definitely seem to have the pace here around Silverstone though, and that's Borodai making a move on Fischer 4P2 on the outside of Maggots. Doesn't quite turn to the inside of Beckett's, can't stay alongside for long enough. That gap closes very quickly, and looks like it's Boardman not anticipating. Yeah, a little kiss there on the back there. Didn't expect Borodai to slow up as much as they did, and that BMW really struggling through that series of corners, and not able to make the move stick on Fischer there at all.
Yeah, that I think Borodai there had the move like on Fischer. They were going around the outside, couldn't do it before the end, so sort of tried to back out. Fischer missed then the 2nd corner in the series of Maggots and Beckett, just completely took the entire apex, grasped everything, get across, and that really stunted Borodai, which of course meant Boardman, as you said, gave Borodai a little kiss on the rear there, as they didn't expect Borodai to slow down so much. But that fight for second is really started to pick up now. Well, here's Tom Bryant. They're currently climbing their way through the M2 field. Of course, they won last week, and I'm never going to let that go because it really was a miracle, and it was just a sight to behold. So go and take a look at that if you missed it last week. But Tom Bryant, trying to get a similar result today, is going to look to really climb up this field a bit more because I'd say Bryant's had some really good pace in this championship. They've had some brilliant finishes as well. And to be running 6th currently at Silverstone in their class, that's not where I'd have said they'd have been today.
Yeah, definitely an underdog story there. That's it, there, Tim. And no, as you say, it's. So I mean, it's one thing as well as obviously Tom Bryant, RCI here as well with us. And another thing as well is it's really nice just having that the kind of underdog to support through everything. And obviously the getting the win at Monza last week. I mean, still, it's not quite able to replicate that today, at least in race 1, but we'll have to see exactly where race 2 will fall to, because again, we've said it before, weather can shift things up a bit, but cutting to our M2 Cup leader, that's Dom Healy, and Dom Healy a good almost 5 seconds, almost 5 seconds ahead of Ripper.
Dom Healy started on pole, has led every single lap of the race and has the fastest lap in all of the M2s as well. Healy is they've had a dream here at Silverstone today, and they're going to continue to keep that dream alive. They're going to lead the rest of this race. It looks like you said, 5 seconds to Marco Ripper behind. Now, interestingly, Heilmann and Ripper, like we saw, are currently tied for points at the top of the Pro Championship. So Ripper here is going to want to finish above Heilmann in both races. Currently, though, the gap between them is 4/10 of a second. Heilmann wants to take that top spot. They're taking down Ripper if it means getting back into that first place position. And I tell you what, it looks like we could up a very interesting finish for the M2 Cup cars next week.
Yeah, just Benjamin really pulling in with the pace here, and just sort of desperate to take back a few more of those points. And I mean, not a whole lot of time left to do it. Only a minute left on the clock now, so if we're not on the last lap, very quickly approaching it. Obviously, that's dictated from the leaders up in the GT4 field, but right on the back of Ripper going through Chapel. And we might be looking at a run down into Stowe if Stewie can get close enough to make a move on the brakes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? We've said that the straights, they might be long here, but that does not matter for the M2s. You can see that Heilmann there looked towards the inside of Ripper, but just wasn't close enough to try and make the move happen in the corner. They're now going to try and follow through here, get a better exit. These cars are all about keeping up momentum as much as possible. Their acceleration is so poor that momentum can change literally everything, especially coming out of these corners here. Ripper having to defend there against Heilmann, who looked towards the inside for a second in the chicane, but didn't quite manage to make it happen. The leader of the race, Verstappen, has just entered the final lap. Fischer up in second, Boardman in third, and Borodai has fallen back down to fourth. So there's been a bit of a mix-up here, but Borodai, not falling off completely, will look to try and get themselves back up into that podium as Fischer tries to close the gap to Verstappen ahead.
Yeah, that's a tall order with nothing left on the clock. 0.8 of a second for Fischer to catch up there, but does have the overall fastest lap of the race, and which is signified by that purple in the number 2 section there that you can see on the left hand side of the screen for Fischer. And Borodai chasing down Boardman, just trying to get back onto the podium. But again, not a long time at all to get that move made. The top 3 having spaced themselves out a little bit otherwise. Stephen Key defending from Verstraeten going down into Stowe there. Key stepping to the inside. Verstraeten not quite able to do anything with that. Almost making contact and corner exit there. Getting I believe it's the better exit. Is it going to be able to make a move down on the inside of Vale? I'm not entirely certain it is, Tim.
Well, Quee here really having to defend against Verstraeten. They've only got to do it for half a lap, and then this race will be over. But Verstraeten has been all over the rear of the Chevrolet so far, and running wide was Quee there. That is not going to help them as they slot back onto the track to try and get a much better exit out of this corner. They've, of course, got traffic ahead of them. It's not M2 traffic, but it is Bart, who's not in the same class, and Schwenchik is currently ahead of Bart as well. So a big fight here for Quee. They need to try and push as hard as they can in these final couple of corners just to stay ahead of the number 67 behind.
Yeah, definitely under threat there, and maybe a little bit held up by Match up at front and Borodai in the last couple of corners. Again, another driver, another driver looking to make a move in this last corner here. Just trying to get away across. It looks like they went in a little bit too deep and actually lost a little bit of ground there to Boardman. So Boardman pulling ahead across the line, and should be, there we go. The leader has finished the race. This is the final lap. This is the last time we'll see these guys come across for race 1. And that is Verstappen taking the win, Fisher P2, Boardman P3, and Borodai rounding out the top 4 positions.
Yeah, that was a phenomenal fight for the front 3 there, and just Verstappen got very good overtake on turn 1, and that basically secured the race. Then, well, here comes Bart, and then never mind, Bart's already finished the race as well. But Bart and Kui managed to stay ahead of Verstappen going into the final corners as well, so Verstappen couldn't quite close that gap up. But Austin, if this race has told me anything, it is that the fight is going to come down to the last lap. Several times, well, not just several times, but several cars across the entire field there were crossing the line almost neck and neck with each other. Well, Dom Healy, they've led every single lap currently of the BMW M2 car race. They have the fastest lap under their belt. They started on pole. They have had a Grand Slam finish here in race 1 today. No threat at all from any of the cars behind, and you're about to see them cross the line to take first place.
You know, a few weeks ago, we were actually chilling with Jesse Lee before the race started, and we were told that Dom Healy was a returning challenger to the game, or at least to RCI. And, again, just showing, just living up to that reputation and showing what they can do.
Don't discount your veterans is the moral of the story there. Healy returning, gets a P1 in race 1 here today. Marco Ripper secures P2, and that will get them a bit of a lead on Benjamin Heilman, who came back in P3 here. We're going to watch a replay of Tom Bryant as they cross the finish line. They were down in 20th, which I believe was 7th overall. They're going very, very slowly, which suggests that they may have run out of fuel and miscalculated for race 1. That is sometimes a factor that plays into these races, but those are the results for race 1 as it stands. And I've got to say, there was a lot of great action there, Austin.
Oh, right into T1. Fisher, Boardman, Verstappen having a 3-way fight going through cops, and again, several just trading positions several times too. I mean, not so much for Verstappen. Verstappen driving just a dominant race there, getting ahead, staying ahead, and not really coming under too much threat, but kept honest for certain. I mean, finishing only a second ahead of everyone else, and wasn't able to. Less than a second, 0.903 of a second, so not able to make any mistakes there towards the end.
Well, here are the finishing positions for race 1. Verstappen in first place. Fisher came second with the fastest lap. Boardman rounded out the podium for the Pro Split in GT4. For the Silver Split in GT4, Bart made a good victory there with quite a lot of the Pro cars in between. Goat finished in second place for the Silver Split, and Lilith finished in third. So a good fight between those 3 as we come into race 2 here. Going down to the BMW M2s, Dom Healy brought home their victory in race 1. Ripper in second and Heilman in third, and then Hunt got the edge over Marshall for the AM class in the M2s. Of course, they're the only 2 drivers for the AM class that are in this race. And Austin, going into race 2 here, I've got a couple of theories myself, but first I want to hear your thoughts on what do you want to see specifically out of Fisher, Boardman and Borodai in terms of challenging Verstappen for the lead of this race?
It'd be really cool to see them work together. And we're talking about weather, Tim, and it looks like we have started with the weather just changed as well. If you look at the top left-hand corner, you'll see the 3 icons. Started with heavy rain building. It was initially going cloudy and then going wet again at the half-hour mark. But no, we've got heavy rain building and then going into light rain. So we are going to see a wet race here today, ladies and gentlemen. But that's Tim very, very excited to hear, because again, this is what Tim, does this invalidate what I was just about to say about Boardman, Verstappen, Borodai working together to try to keep up to Fisher? But then again, it all comes down to, again, we saw the move into T1 before, so you can't really say anything too soon.
Right. First of all, yes, I love rain. It makes races so interesting, and I love seeing the difference in strategies as well in terms of like how much you push. But um, I'd say knowing these drivers, having seen them in a couple of championships now, especially in the GT4 cars, Verstappen absolutely is still going to go for that turn one move. Verstappen is your default aggressive driver. They're really good at attacking. They love those overtaking maneuvers, and they will absolutely take you in a fight into any corner they can. Fisher, also one of the veterans of RCI, really good on the defense too. And I don't doubt for a second they're going to try and get a better start here. Now, going back to race one, honestly, I'd have given that to Fisher easily any day of the week. If you asked me who I thought was going to win race 1 and 2 here, I'd have said Fisher. But Verstappen made that move into turn 1, and then Fisher went wide into Maggots and Beckett. So what I want to see from Fisher here is a much cleaner start where they're not under that immediate threat from Verstappen, and then they can just hold on to it that little bit longer. Like, let's say Verstappen does get through. They just need to stay on the track. And I think that in turn will really help them with their race, because realistically Fisher had much more pace than Verstappen. They just got stuck behind Boardman for the first 6 laps. And by the time they'd finally cleared Boardman and Borodai, who'd come into the fight, there wasn't enough time. You said yourself, there wasn't enough time to reclose that gap back up to Verstappen. So for those two, I think it's going to come down to what happens in that first corner. But I don't doubt for a second that Verstappen is going to really force the move here. Even in the rain, Verstappen is going to be looking to try and overtake Fisher as soon as they can.
Yeah, they say the race isn't won or lost into T1, but nothing wrong with a little bit of well-placed aggression as well from anyone's side. I mean, obviously, talk about Verstappen here. But no, I think you're right. I think if Fisher can just kind of stay calm, stay composed, and even if Verstappen gets through, just trust that they have the pace to get back around again later in the race. It's a 40-minute race, this one, so it is a longer race with more opportunities. As we go back to Jesse Lee, just anticipating the race start as much as we are, I think, Tim.
Yeah, you can see just analysing the last race in his head there, just expression on his face. You can read it all really from that, really analysing the results of that last race. But yeah, Austin, going back to what I was saying, I think if Fisher leads into turn 1, they start to pull away and they win this race. I think Verstappen, in order to have another shot at a victory here, does need to really get through quite quickly. And that's nothing against Verstappen, a really good driver and also an amazing driver in the wet. But I think in terms of pace across this entire week as a whole, Fisher has just been that much faster around Silverstone. So I'll be interested to see if the rain actually changes that, as actually it looks like it's going to start to dry up after 30 minutes. And although that's not going to make it immediately dry, this is a 40-minute race. This is double the length of race 1. It's worth double the points. If that dries up with 10 minutes left of the race to go, we could be seeing a very interesting final couple of laps.
Do you know what? This actually just makes it that one step more interesting. Going back to that, Tim, because you're entirely right. The race drying up whilst the race drying up whilst we're still racing. That means, do you stay on wet tires? Do you try to push them for as long as possible and avoid the stop in the final 10 minutes of the race, or do you stop for dries at some point? And at what point do you risk going for dries, losing the time, but try to gain it back at the end? And rather than just this being the rain affecting racing here today, strategy comes into it now too.
I agree. Why is Box sitting in the pits, and why do they have a drive-through? I saw they came out, they didn't start in the pits, they started their lap, but they picked up a drive-through somewhere, and I'm not 100% sure what grants that, because it wouldn't have been live stewarding. We don't do live stewarding for Thursdays, it all happens afterwards in reports. What ACC penalty grants you a drive-through before the race has even started?
It could be, I've seen this before once or twice, that it could be that if you fall so far behind where the delta where you're supposed to keep into, that can trigger penalties as well.
Oh!
And I'm wondering if they've just picked up a drive-through, and they've tried to keep up with the delta, and the game's issued a drive-through where there's not meant to be one. And maybe that pitting is frustration? I mean, I'd be pretty frustrated if that happened to me. I'd know that for certain. and it looked like they were keeping up with with their slot in the grid. So I don't see a reason why they'd be given the drive-through from what we could see here in the box. But I do know that the game can sometimes go a little bit strange at the start line procedure.
That's interesting. I'm wondering here, I'm not sure if this is why they return to the pits or whether the game forced them to the pits, or like you said, it's frustration. But if they start this race from the pit lane, does that automatically clear the drive-through as well? Because that would be a really interesting bit of knowledge if that is the case.
That is some Schumacher vibes here at a wet Silverstone. Who would have thought? So, hey, so no, I mean, I'd hope so. I mean, Bog was up there as well in terms of qualifying pace for the M2 class. So, no, it would be a shame to see them drop out this race entirely, or be basically doubly penalised by that drive-through. So hopefully they'll still be able to race and hopefully be able to make up to a decent position.
Race 2 is about to be underway. Fischer lining up on pole due to their qualifying finish. Verstappen currently in second place. Boardman and Borodai both lurking just behind as we head into race 2 here. Austin Devonshire, take us away.
So yeah, obviously just going a bit slow until we see the green flag, and that will be Fischer leading the pack down into T1. Still just slowing everyone up just a little bit, just kind of bunching up, obviously having to hold a 70 kilometers per speed. It seems like such a long time. Verstappen looking like they're inching ahead. There's the green light. That's what we've been waiting for. That's 40 minutes starting from now. Verstappen, will we see that aggression into T1? I don't think we will. Fischer holding onto the lead, going down to Maggots and Beckett, but Verstappen getting the better exit. Borodai getting the exit onto Boardman too. Looking on the outside of Maggots, obviously a slower speed than we saw in the last race. The wet really affecting things there. But that's contact. That's contact between Verstappen and Fischer. Not enough to cause any major damage or to change any positions or send anybody around, but that will be a reminder to Fischer that Verstappen is right behind them and is willing to get their elbows out.
Verstappen once again very feisty through the first few corners. They did go for the move round the outside of Fischer, but Fischer closed it off much quicker. They learned from the last race. Bock, of course, still has to serve the drive-through penalty. Their strategy of starting the pit lane didn't work, if that is what they were going for there. But Fischer continues to lead this race. Verstappen lurking just behind him. Boardman and Borodai lurking just behind Verstappen as well. But for now, Fischer has kept the lead of race 2. And it looks like it's time to start putting a gap on Verstappen because they know that they've got the pace here at Silverstone.
I mean, absolutely, Tim. And I mean, it's going to be a long race from here on out. And that's Hellman. Oh, no. And that's number 40. Who's the 40?
It's Healy.
Healy. I was going to say that's Dom Healy that just got sent around there. That is Hellman involved in yet another incident going through Stowe there, sending Healy round. According to the timesheet, Healy's still in P1 in class, but I don't think that's true. I have to wait for that to be updated to find where they have come out. But by that logic, that will mean that Hellman has taken the lead in the M2 class, as we see Lilith losing a position there to Azure Ghost, but sticking right on the back end of the McLaren, going down. You cannot see anything ahead there, going down the run down into Brooklands. So hard. How do you make a move when that is your visibility, when that is all you can see? What do you do in that situation there, Tim?
Close your eyes and hope for the best. I mean, you can't see anything anyway, so what's the point having your eyes open? But you are right there. The rain causes so much visibility problems that it's almost impossible to get that overtake to happen because you just, for starters, you can't even see when the brake board's coming up for the corner. So you do have to be really, really careful in these conditions. And it's one of the reasons you start to see a lot of these cars pan out a lot more in the race because you can't follow for that long. You'll try and stay on the tail of the person ahead of you, but you just simply can't see anything. And that's something that Daly is going to be really feeling right now as they're getting ever so close to the rear of Bart in the McLaren here. Now that BMW, it's got a very, very sort of tall car. You can see over the McLaren in that BMW in a normal day. But with the rain kicking up in your face, Daly and a lot of the other drivers that you can see across the board are very, very close. They won't be able to see anything right now.
No, not at all. Looking back on my other screen there, we saw Lilith making another move onto Azure through Maggots and Beckett, and Lilith, who has reclaimed second place in the silver class. And no, everyone having to sort of trust themselves and each other here a little bit in these conditions. And we had the theory. Yeah, okay, going back to this little fight here, and that's Tom Watts in the centre there in the Alpine with a little bit of contact bouncing off of Azure, bouncing off of Lilith, and again Tom Watts got bounced again in the first race, so not the weekend that they've been looking for. Coming out in P15. Can we see any damage to that Alpine? I don't think we can. It looks like they just got bumped into the grass. Plenty of grass runoff here at Silverstone, which Tom will be thankful for, but not thankful for the little help round there.
Tom Watts returns after missing the Monza race, returns to Silverstone to try and get another good result, as they've had a very flying start to the season. There's just been bullied in both races here, really. And I mean, it's not even been by other cars. Like in the first race, it was just like their own thing. They spun off in the coming onto the track. But either way, this has been rough for the Alpine today. And I've got to say, I've missed the Alpine. We've had a nice range of cars in this championship. We've seen Ginettas, KTMs, Alpines, Chevrolets. You know, we've had a really good range of the cars in the GT4s, and I'd be excited to see what happens next week when all of those cars are back, because I'm sure all of them will be in the final round.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a race you really want to miss, especially with championships this close and up for grabs. No, this is 4 championships in today. You've got Pro GT4 and GT4. You've got the Pro TCX and the AM TCX. That's 4 championships up for grabs. You know, and it could go either way with any of them. So, you know, it'd be a shame to see people miss the final race. Looking through things in our little chat here, Tim. Stewie saying about a DC or a disconnect. So that would be Hellman retiring from the race. So, I mean, we saw them get involved in that little incident there with Healy earlier on. So, that class has just been blown open for the final race here at Silverstone. There's so much going on all at once, and it's kind of replicating the same cars that we saw last week here, Tim.
Yeah, well, Holman had that, you know, they're leading the championship. Of course, they were tied on points with Marco Ripper, so actually Ripper was leading the championship going into race 2 here. But, you know, the DC from Holman there, like you said, it's going to blow this championship wide open. Ripper going to get a really good points finish. I believe they're currently in first in class. They are. Ripper leading Tom Bryant, leading Hull. So this is going to change the championship standings completely. And Ripper has had an absolutely brilliant week so far at Silverstone. But that being said, there's 34 minutes left in race 2 here. The weather is wet, and already I'm seeing cars sliding around as they touch the curbs, because one thing we've not talked about is how the wet affects the track, and that is that if you touch a curb and try and brake on it, you're not going to be stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, these curbs, obviously, did you see the black and white lines there? You know, that's paint on those curbs, and the green runoff as well. I mean, paint in the wet, you have less friction, the tyres don't work, and even with all of the traction control and all of the electronic aids in the world, the car will want to go around on you. And that's what some of these drivers are starting to find. If you're wet driving in ACC, it is not the easiest thing at the best of times, let alone when you're going wheel to wheel with other drivers. And no, it's Tom Byron, and seeing Tom on the podium yet again. Obviously, not through the best of circumstances so far, but I mean, hell, we take those. I'm sure Tom will certainly take it. But you know, seeing Tom on the podium again, is that something that they can make stick, especially with Healy only around 5 seconds behind? Is that something they can make stick with half an hour of the race remaining and the track drying out?
Yeah, I was going to say, Tom Bryant had an amazing start to this championship, and with their win last week as well, they were 4th in the standings in their class. And I've got to say, I'd say they're one of the drivers that's performed the most across this championship in terms of their usual performance on Thursdays. And it's good to see, but like going into this final round, Bryant's got a real opportunity here to pick up even more points and push themselves into those top spots too, especially with Heilman coming out of this race. That opens up a big opportunity for Bryant to close the gap to them. Well, here's Quee trying to defend currently. Lilith behind the Porsche, really looking for a move round here. They were almost touching the rear of that Chevrolet coming through that corner, and I imagine right now they can't see a thing in this wet weather, but you can see them now just trying to get out of that direct slipstream, just so they can see the track ahead, but have fallen behind coming into the next corner. Though it looks like Kui there may have taken that a lot wider, and that's opened the door for Lilith to try and get a better exit down the inside here, looking towards the outside of the chicane. Not going to be able to find it alongside here. Going to have to tuck back from now, but coming into a straight. If they can get a better exit like they have down the inside of Kui, that'll be enough to get them through. And Lilith, with a brilliant bit of daring overtaking for the chicane there, puts themselves up into 9th place.
Goes to show just how far that calm racing and calm racecraft can go, using the Porsche's agility around the as we said, very quick acceleration of the Camaro, and just play to the car's strength. So I don't want to discredit either driver here as well and say it's just the car, because it really isn't. It obviously took a lot for Lilith to understand, where the car's pros and the car's strengths and weaknesses are, and then to be able to use them as well, and how to use them is an amazing skill to have, and that is a mark that makes a great driver. On board with Svenchek now, chasing down a Razor, going down into Brooklyn, hitting the brakes, is just about spotting the curb there to mark the inside braking zone. And just again not able to find the grip. Even you see the wheel turning hard right, trying to find any kind of grip on the wet surface right now, and it's never really that easy. And going down towards Cops, another fast section, and the visibility again just diminishes very, very quickly towards, let's be honest, just such a fast corner.
Yeah, it's a really fast corner. You've got to be careful going through there anyway, and as you can see there, Svenchek couldn't see anything. So it's a big concern of the right ways. We've said it already, is that the visibility is very, very poor. And Ted Edwards in our broadcasting booth made a very good point just there. You can actually see water. So you can see something, it's just not what you want to be seeing as you're racing at very fast speeds across a very quick corner.
That's very true, and I mean, I think a lot of these drivers would be wishing they brought us. they brought a speedboat this time around. So, but I mean, to be fair, let's be honest here. Key isn't far off bringing the Camaro, so the quickest boat out there. But no, Svenchek still trying to find a way around a Razor, going down into Vale now. And we saw Lilith make the move with the Porsche earlier on here, and not quite close enough to be side by side to make that happen. And no, again, half an hour of the race to go, only 10 minutes in, so anything can still happen. Jesus. And a dry line, I don't know if it's just me there, Tim, but I think I am seeing a dry line start to form only just.
Well, the rain did let off for a little bit. We saw on the forecast that 10 minutes in, it was going to get dry for basically half a second. And we saw the rain yielded a little bit, and you probably can start to see that dry line forming, especially with the cars going around the track as well. They'll start to form a dry line too. So really now, I'm actually, funny enough, we've not talked about tyres for 2 weeks now on those M2 Cup cars. And it's something we used to talk about a lot at the beginning of the championship. But I'm going to bring up the tyres now. Got a 40-minute race, tyres always diminish over that time. The M2 in particular struggles with tyres across a long period of time. The other factor that's going to come into play here is they're currently on wet tyres, and we're about to have dry weather towards the end of this race, so that's definitely not going to help. And we've also got a very mixed field down there at the moment with people in weird places, because I think there's been a lot of accidents that I've noticed. So that M2 Cup car at the end of the field, amongst all of the GT4s that are trying to get round them in blue flags, I think it could be quite interesting, and it might have a very interesting and slidey finish to this race.
Yeah, I mean, the top three obviously being the first to hit it, and that is where all of the fighting has been. Well, I say all of it, that's a lie. Sorry, guys. No, that is a lie. There's been action up and down the field, but again, we're still like 13 minutes in now, and the top three still separated by only 0.6 of a second. And now the drying conditions bringing strategy into play. And as you say there, Tim, the M2 Cup cars potentially acting as a bit of a roadblock and could shift up the order. Boardman has fastest lap so far, getting a bit of a slide on through Stowe there. Boardman fastest lap by 0.4 of a second. So not by all means, not a small amount by any means. So this is still anybody's race.
10 minutes ago, Fischer had a 1.5-second gap on Verstappen. Oh, as Lilith, I believe they made an overtake on someone, or maybe just
That was on
actually.
Daly.
Well,
That was on Daly.
that is daily. Wow.
That was just a late break straight on the inside of Vale. I had that up on my second screen, and that was something to behold, honestly. Just, again, very committed, very just able to just be assertive on your line, and if you're able to sort of squeeze past the car, then, you know, you will make that position. Daly not even contesting it, really. But no, that will be another position gained, and another car closing, another car closed to Matcha, who was only a few seconds up the road now.
Yeah, that was a brilliant. I wish I'd seen that in full, but I only caught the end of it. However, going back to what I was saying about the front runners, Fischer, of course, had a much better. No, Dom Healy, never mind. They're going for a move. They're going to try and get an overtake here on Hull as they go towards the inside of the chicane here. They've got a much better exit too, and in these cup cars, that should be enough to hold them ahead. You can see Hull there going wide on the exit as well, and that's another overtake by Dom Healy, who won last race. But once again, going back to the point I was trying to make about the front runners, Fischer at one point was fastest lap there, 1.5 seconds ahead of Verstappen and Bourman. Then Verstappen was the fastest lap, and then closed in, was 3 tenths behind Fischer. Bourman was lagging about 1 second behind those two, and now Bourman has also closed their gap as well. And we've yet again got a fight between Fischer, Verstappen, and Bourman for first place, and they're all about 5 tenths off each other. So these guys absolutely going to be battling it out now. As you can see, this could go either way. Different conditions, different paces, and all of them here are really showcasing what they can do. You can just see now Verstappen closed in on Fischer. They're going to try and make this overtake happen as soon as they can, so that they have the advantage going into the end of this race.
Absolutely, Tim, and I actually want to bring up a bit of a point here. And if you're Boardman at this stage in the race, obviously you've got fastest lap. These guys are fighting. Fischer is just looking to run away with it. Verstappen is looking just to keep up with Fischer and try to make a move. If you're Boardman, what do? Do you try to be equally as aggressive and try to get involved in the mix and try to assist in slowing down Fischer more? But that also comes with the risk of slowing down Verstappen. If you slow down Verstappen, you run the risk of getting stuck behind them and allowing Fischer to run away with the race. So what do you do if you're Bobbin? Do you just sort of like hang back and make sure there's still a bit of a gap and wait for a mistake? Wait for Verstappen to maybe get past Fischer and then make a move yourself? Or do you just go full send and try to get through, Tim?
Boardman should do what Boardman does best, and that is sit here, put out the fastest laps you can, and wait for the chaos out front to unfold, because honestly, like that's what Boardman does best. Boardman's really good at putting those fast laps and picking up the pieces, whereas Verstappen, Fischer, they're going to be battling it out. It's in their nature for both of them to really fight it out, and all it's going to do is slow them down. So what I want to see Boardman do here is just wait for that opportunity to strike. You have 24 minutes in the race. You don't need to make anything happen yet. You know, you've got time to sit there and weigh things up and try and work out the safest way through.
That might be the way forward. Just taking a look at the raid check on the standings just now. It just looks like Verstappen again, business as usual out in front. Cars not really opening or closing a gap, and that could be a bad thing for Verstappen, because you don't want to give Fischer too much breathing room, because we know their pace. There we go. That's fastest lap of the race coming in there from Fischer. So Fischer really lucky to get the leg to run away here.
The reason you see it become fastest lap of the race as well is, oh my gosh, Verstappen going really, really wide there, completely missing the corner, and will have to come back onto the track safely. But the reason Fischer got fastest lap, well, one of the reasons, one of them is that Fischer's amazingly fast and has just picked up their pace stop. The second reason, though, the rain is starting to get a lot lighter, so a lot of these cars will be going faster around the track. And if you take a look at the weather forecast at the top right hand side of the screen, Austin, in 10 minutes time we're going to have dry weather, and it's going to stay dry for the rest of the race.
Yeah, I mean, we're expecting that in the closing 10 minutes for it to start getting drier. And I mean, looking at my gate here, it looks like the rain has already stopped for the most part. I'm not sure if the cars have the wipers on still. We'll have to see when we get a front angle or an onboard. And that looks like Matcha trying that's Matcha making a dive on the inside of Svenchek, carrying a little bit too much speed into stow there. Svenchek able to stay calm and collected and retake the line and the position. And that'll be Matcha losing time on that lap there, allowing Lilith only 5.3 seconds behind. So, with 20 minutes of the race to go, and with the conditions changing, this could mean that Lilith is able to catch up, and we could not see not just a battle for first position in the pro class here, Tim, but in the silver class too.
Yeah, it's absolutely still on the cards here. According to our broadcaster Ted Edwards, John Daly is now out of this race, and I can't see them on the standings. So Daly is currently out of the race as it stands. Dominicus, who had an amazing race last week at Monza, they won both the races, is currently struggling a little bit in their new class. They had an okay finish up last race one, but it wasn't brilliant. And the pace did look like it struggled across the race a little bit. And Dominicus, now you can see, just trying to close the gap to the cars ahead here. They had an accident at the beginning. So did Waldecker behind, who's now in the pit lane. They might have actually retired from this race. Bok 2 had an accident as well. And I think Arnek might have struggled too. So a lot of these M2 Cup cars got in accidents at the beginning, whether that was just running wide or actually hitting each other. And now you can see they're just trying to close the gap and pick up the pieces.
Yeah, and sometimes that isn't the most terrible thing. You know, you kind of consolidate where you are on the track, and as we cut into a replay, this is the leaders now. It's Verstappen making a move on to Fisher, just a little bit elbows out there and making contact, and I believe both of them running wide. But that will be Verstappen pulling ahead of Fisher there from the looks of things. I'm looking at this angle now. No, wait, no.
What?
No, that's Venture. Wait,
That's Fisher in front. That's Boardman in second, and Verstappen in third.
So Verstappen has just lost. Sorry, I saw Svenchek there on the screen there, and I got a little bit confused because the cars are very similar colours. But no, that will be a change in position at the front there.
Boardman really capitalised off that. I mean, I was so confused. You said Verstappen down in front. I was like, yeah, Verstappen is. I was like, no, hang on a second. That's Boardman. Where did he come from? And Fisher managed to give himself a bit of a gap, but Boardman pushes himself up in second. And this is what I was saying. Boardman does what Boardman does best. And that is they put out fast laps. They wait for chaos to happen. Fisher and Verstappen touch, and in comes Boardman up into second.
But now Boardman also at risk of the carnage here a little bit. We know how aggressive Verstappen is. You said at the start of this race here, Tim, and that was a demonstration there. There was a gap. Verstappen went for it, and for one reason or another, that gap closed and contact was made. And now that has cost Verstappen that position to Boardman, and potentially the position onto Fisher as well. So, I mean, 90 minutes of the race left to go. We said it before, changing conditions. The forecast does say in half an hour more rain, but at that point in time, there's only 20 minutes of the race remaining. But it's not really relevant to the race so far right now. That 10-minute forecast is the one that we are interested in. You know, this is far from over.
Yeah, I mean, like, the track's going to dry up a little bit. It's not going to get dry. You know, the wet tyres are most likely going to stay optimum for the entire race. But, you know, they're going to get hot. They're going to struggle, especially as the track dries up. If it dries up quickly as well, as Quee there made contact with the number 67 car. But, you know, if these tyres heat up, the cars are going to struggle, and it's going to cause more accidents. But get a couple of drive-throughs in here now, Austin. Svenchik picked up one a couple of laps ago, so they'll be looking to serve that soon. Goats just picked up a drive-through as well, and it's important to remember, we said it a little bit today, there is no live stewarding, so these are for track cuts. That means that a driver has cut the track 4 times and gained a lasting advantage in time. That's caused them to get a drive-through penalty from the game, and we said that it would play a factor today, and it's starting to play a factor about halfway through race 2 here.
Yeah, I mean, tracks like Paul Ricard, Silverstone, Spa, you know, tracks where you have these open exits, you know, they're notorious for drivers picking up these track limits penalties. And, you know, again, something else we kind of, I guess, foreshadowed in a way with us picking up that second drive-through. Obviously, the first one being picked up by Svenchek there. As we still see Stephen Key, and that is Verstraeten fighting it out, coming through Chapel. Verstraeten tucking it right behind that Camaro going down into Stowe. And Stephen Key holding a very tight inside defensive line there. He's cutting to Svenchek's rear wing. There we go. Stephen Key, rear wing, looking at Verstraeten, just still trying to find a way around on the outside of Stowe. Not typically a move that will often stick, but sometimes it can. But losing the time and not able to outbreak down into the Vale.
Yeah, I think going around the outside of Stowe, it's tough to pull. You really have to keep the momentum, and you need to hope the car inside of you breaks the momentum, which isn't really likely to happen. It also gives them a lot of advantage just to push you out as wide as possible. Boardman there made a little bit of a mistake coming through the village section. That gives Verstappen a chance to close that gap yet again, but not enough to be close enough to pull alongside on the straight here. And Verstappen, since falling down into P3, hasn't looked to be contending Boardman too much. So I'm wondering if Boardman's pace has picked up enough that they can keep up with Fischer and just keep Verstappen in that gap, because Verstappen has looked to be struggling this past couple of laps now.
Yeah, I'm wondering if either the sustained damage or just as a kind of a bit of a mental knock, really. You know, you go for a move, it doesn't quite work for one reason or another. You take the side hit, you lose a position, and a lot of being a good driver here is the ability to not become too rattled by that. And I'm wondering if that's exactly what's happened here. You lose that position, you see the clock, it's counting down, 16 minutes of the race remaining, and you know that. Well, that's what's the point is you don't know. You don't really know how quick the track's going to dry out. You don't know what the strategy for yourself is going to be, let alone the cars ahead of you. You don't know what kind of setup they're running. So it's a really difficult situation to be in, and then the pressure just keeps mounting, and you're just relying on raw pace alone to keep up to the back of Boardman in Verstappen's position here, let alone trying to find a way around, and that is not being made easy, as Boardman having to go defensive on the inside of Stowe here. Verstappen tucking in right behind, and Boardman taking a fairly relaxed line through here, and the top three spaces will not change in this particular instance.
In the chat, Monotone has brought up an interesting point that I've only just remembered because they brought it up. Monotone said, how are people dealing with the new GT4 tyres? Of course, there was an update today that added the new American tracks into the game. There was an update that helped add them in the DLC if you actually want to play on them. But what the update also did, Austin, is it changed the model for the GT4 tyres, and it made them work differently. And well, we're currently racing with GT4s on the track, so something that's going to be interesting is how these drivers, with basically no practice on the new tyre model, have now adapted to that.
That's a really good point, and I thought there was just a track pack release. I actually didn't realize that there was a patch or two in there, so that is a really interesting point. I mean, looking at the standings, it's kind of business as usual. But that's the point. This is what we've been saying now for the past couple of weeks. The names that are on the grid right now, they are, you know, some of the best that you will find around in this game or in these communities. You know, Fischer, Boardman, Verstappen, you know, Eraser, Borodai, Verstraeten, you know, Daly, amazing names. And the mark of a really amazing driver is the ability to adapt quickly on the fly. You know, no one's in an advantage or a disadvantage situation here with this update. Everyone's facing the same thing at the same time with the same amount of preparation, and the ability to adapt is the important part here, and that's what these drivers have done. And this is why you're still seeing the same names, Fischer, Bob, and Verstappen, at the top of the grid and fighting out for the podium.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's absolutely, like you said, the people at the top will stay at the top because they are the ones that adapt the best. And it just goes to show the skill level of these drivers, that they can adapt that quickly. Interestingly enough, though, it's not just the tyre models that have changed. It's actually a lot of the cars have undergone new patches. You know, they've reworked some of the cars just to rebalance them into real life and stuff. And it's definitely brought some of the cars that maybe weren't competitive onto the playing field a bit more. Now it's way more prominent in the GT3 side of things in this particular patch, but the GT4s have also undergone some changes as well. And like I said, I don't know the exact statistics of them, but one thing I do know is that the BMW was in the sights to be nerfed, which is one reason why maybe it's not performed so well today. Of course, we've only got one on the track, although that being said, it has actually performed really well today. Borodai has just been making some brilliant stuff for this BMW, but you know, some of these cars just might be struggling with a bit of a nerf overall, and some of them may be really improving with being just given more advantages. But that's the thing, is there was a patch today. It came through, I don't think it was even 5 hours ago now. So these guys, like you said, won't have had the chance to practice, and it's all about adapting as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and as our broadcaster Ted has said in our ears here, the rain has stopped, and I mean, not only that, we can also see the fact that there's no more rain. And looking at the weather forecast, it is indeed cloudy, so the track from here on out will only be getting drier with the last 12 minutes of the race remaining. And this is where you know, basically the track becomes a time bomb for these tires because these conditions are not going to improve, and this is where you might start seeing people maybe switch up strategies a little bit, you know, diving into the pits, trying to get dry tires on and make the most of the advantage that they'll offer later on in the race. But the top three so far opting to stay out on the wet, at least for, I'd imagine, a few more laps. And Fisher opening up a bit of a gap, but that's not the talking point here. The talking point now is looking in the mirror. That's Verstappen pulling up to the back of Boardman. Boardman going very defensive, squeezing Verstappen off, but Verstappen setting him fastest lap in that last lap there, and an 18.925 there. So both guys in front have invalidated their laps. And now we're starting to catch up to the M2 grid. This is what you were talking about, Tim. You were talking about these cup cars holding up our leaders, closing the gap, and maybe shifting things up a bit.
Yeah, it definitely plays a huge part. Monza in particular, there were so many, not incidents where they hit each other, but there were incidents where they came close, and it really shook up the grid a lot. And that's the thing, when you're clearing back markers, they're going significantly slower than you, especially these M2 Cup cars. And it can cause a huge problem. We've seen it at Paul Ricard, we've seen it at Monza. It's going to be prominent across this entire championship, and it's going to be especially prominent for Fisher, Bourman, and Verstappen right now, who are still fighting out at the front. Now, I am going to give you guys a 10-minute warning. If Tom Bryan finishes this race in first place again today, I am going to be screaming over the moon at this finish. Tom Bryan won their first ever RCI race at Monza last week. They then went and won another one at the weekend in a team cup with a friend. And it looks like they're about to win another one here at Silverstone today. They have a 1.4 second gap to Dom Healy behind. And so far, they have been absolutely outperforming everybody. Is this going to be another race win for Tom Bryan?
I mean, at the start of this race here, you know, Healy was 5 seconds behind, but now has clear air on Tom. A second and a half over 10 minutes, that could mean a lot as Jamie Hunt pulling into the pits there. I'm not sure if these cars have the air jacks. I didn't see it go up on them at all, so I'm not sure if that's pulled into... Oh, Verstappen making a bit of a mistake there as well. Verstappen also picking up a drive-through for that, so that is that'll be the track limits. That'll be Verstappen going onto the outside curb, coming off the racing surface, picking up the warning for that. The game thinking that they have gained time. They gained time for that exit there, and that has just put them out of the running of the top three. And that, as it stands, will promote Borodai to another podium finish for this weekend.
Oh, this could be really bad for Verstappen here. It depends how far that drive is going to push them down. They, of course, are currently first in the standings in the championship, but if they get a bad finish here, if this drive-through puts them far enough down in the field, that could be very bad for Verstappen, as that gap will close right up to Fisher and Boardman. But that, I mean, for Boardman, that's just a huge sigh of relief. And I'm going to take you back, Austin, to something you said a couple of laps ago, which was that apparently Boardman and Fisher invalidated their laps ahead of Verstappen after they set their fastest one. I was going to say that means that they probably got a track cut at some point as well. It's highly likely they picked up warnings on those laps where they invalidated their laps. Verstappen is the one that's picked up the first drive-through, which means that all three of them now could be packing a lot of track warnings, and that means that Fisher and Bourman have to be very careful in the last 8 minutes here to not also find themselves in the same position as the 747.
That wouldn't surprise me with how hard these guys have been fighting. You know, these guys have kept each other honest from start to finish so far. That's Matcha hitting the inside curb at Club there. That could do a lot of damage to the car, especially in real life. And yeah, just pulling off the line, trying to find some of the wet patches, coming off the dry line, trying to cool those tyres down. Obviously, still running those wet tyres. And that means that if they're having problems, so is everybody else. And that will only mean that these cars are becoming more volatile, harder to control, and we could see some more major upsets in the few laps coming up.
Absolutely, and you can't pit. There's no reason to pit here. The problem is the weather's drying up, but the track definitely isn't dry yet. You can see at the top right, the track is still wet, and that means that the dry tyres are really going to struggle here. It's not going to get dry enough for the tyres to ever be optimum in the dry, but it is going to become dry enough that the wet tyres are going to start to struggle as well. So you've just got to stick it out. As here,
Ooh.
Dominicus, who had a very good week last week, really struggling at Silverstone, finds themselves facing the wrong way. Now, I'm not sure if there was any contact there that caused that. It doesn't look like there was. We're going to have a race replay actually and find out what happened. But I think they might have just gone for a spin themselves.
Fisher.
Actually. Oh no, Fisher!
No,
The
Fisher.
leader of the race has spun out of Dominicus there in the M2 Cup car. That's going to get the steward's attention because that is a cross-class penalty.
Yeah, that's a huge one, especially GT4 onto the Cup car as well. And I mean, on one hand, it shows just how far Bodman is pushing Fisher here for the race win. But however, that is, again, the onus is usually on the car behind. I say usually, we're not stewards. We cannot really make a judgment on this. We can only call what we see, and the stewards will make a decision later on. But the onus is usually on the car behind. So right now, it's not looking good for Fisher in that particular incident.
Yeah, that's going to really hurt Fisher, and Boardman may pick up an after-race win here if Fisher does get a penalty. But that being said here, Boardman is really, they're not in contention for this championship. They are someone who's consistently finished really high up in these races, and I honestly thought that they'd be someone that's basically at the top, but they're currently sitting 5th in the standings. They are, let's do the math, really 65 points behind Verstappen, who's leading. That's basically a race win they need to have over Verstappen here, and it doesn't look like they're going to get it. So Boardman here basically just needs to get some amazing results in these final 2 races and hope something else happens to Fisher and Verstappen. So really what I'm trying to say is, this is what Boardman needs. Verstappen taking the drive for penalty has found themselves down in 6th. They're about 5 seconds off Bart, as here Healy has made a move on Tom Bryant, and they're currently leading Tom Bryant out this corner, which means Bryant has lost the lead down in 2nd place here. A lot of you in the chat I saw earlier cheering on for Tom. You're going to want Tom to make a strike back here as Tom looks towards the inside of turn 1. Not able to do so though, and Healy will be in the lead for this race. That's going to be a hard blow for Tom.
Such a difficult place to pass at the best of times there, Tim. It's the wet not making it any easier. The drying conditions, these intermediate conditions not making it easier still. And no, I mean, for Tom, they're still finishing up on where they qualified. This is still, a race win last week. In between the 2 races, has picked up a race win, and still looking at a podium for this week. So that's still a result to shout home about. That's still something to sort of celebrate. But it was 4.5 minutes remaining of this race. They're still within striking distance to take that lead back. All it takes is one mistake from Healy, and Tom has made this stick. And so don't discount anything right now. Anything can still happen.
Yeah, I think you're right. Tom's going to still be really happy with this result, whether they get back into 1st or whether they stay 2nd here. Like, I've known Tom a long time. We've been doing these Thursday championships together a while because, of course, he's the one that helps to set up all the running for them and he helps to come up with the plan for it. But I've seen him race in every single one, and I've got to say, this Tom Bryant has the worst luck out of anyone racing I know. They'll be getting these high positions, they'll be fighting in 1st place, they'll be miles ahead of everyone, and then they'll just spin the car out, end up at the back of the field, they get hit by someone else, end up at the back of the field. They have the worst luck out of anyone, and Ted Edwards, our broadcast, has just agreed with me actually there. And I think Brian just being able to finish 2nd here will be a huge relief. If 1st is the only place he's dropped, that'll be a huge relief for him.
Yeah, I mean, again, looking at the gap now, I'm not seeing the gap. Ripper 4 seconds behind, 3 minutes remaining. As long as Brian keeps it on the road, keeps it on the grey stuff, I don't see them dropping that. I'd say that with cross fingers. I don't want to be the one to curse anybody at this stage. But no, looking at the maths, looking at the statistics, that is where we are looking. Verstappen making the move there on Stephen Key in the 26 Camaro. Looking through Abbey, it looks like Verstappen running a little bit wide. Key's checking on the inside, taking advantage, taking that position back. Swapping positions just a few corners apart with 3 minutes remaining. It looks like Stephen Key will keep that position, but Lilith picking up a drive-through, second in class in the second in class for Silver. Tom in my ear there. Sounds of frustration there for Lilith for the Race Ventura GT4 team. And pick up that drive-through will mean that might put them at risk of Azure. Actually, might put them at risk of Carlisle for sure, but maybe also at the risk of Azure as well. So that will potentially be positions drop there for Lilith in the GT4 Silver class.
We pick our broadcasters here at RCI, all of them very, very passionate about the racing that happens, all of them very good at watching the racing as well. But Ted there did express their dismay for Lilith as they pull into pits to serve the drive-through penalty. Apparently it's their teammate as well, actually, so definitely very disappointed that has happened. But Lilith serving the drive-through penalty. We're going to see whether they come out ahead of Carlisle here or whether they will be behind. I think they will just be able to pull ahead of Carlisle, but we'll find out shortly. Verstappen has just put in the fastest lap of the race. They're still down in 6th after their drive-through from earlier, and Lilith has actually just got themselves a stop-and-go penalty there of 30 seconds.
No!
That means they entered the pits too fast.
No! Oh, I'll tell you one thing though, Ted. If I know Carlisle like I know Carlisle, they'll take that. You know, second in class, podium in class last week, and again podium in class this week too. Capitalizing on the mistakes of Azure and, you know, at this point the mistakes of Lilith as well. They'll take that second in class quite happily. You know, by staying consistent, keeping out of trouble, maybe not with the best pace in the world or best pace in class, still able to pick up the results. And again, this is what goes to show, you know, these track limits and these like small mistakes, they really do add up to something bigger. And that is a shame to see Lilith picking up that stop-go 30. Especially after such a good result last week too. Andy Bobbin still chasing down Fisher here, going down into Brooklands. Not able, you know, again, just the presence alone to Fisher being enough of a threat to maybe to just keep Fisher honest, basically. If Fisher makes a mistake, Bobbin is going through, and, you know, as you said earlier, Tim, that post, you know, there's a potential post-race penalty here for Fisher, and that might also shift things up a bit.
We're about to cross the line now into the final lap of this race. Fisher leads Boardman, but only by 0.5 of a second. Can Boardman close that gap and make the overtake happen, or will Fisher be able to hold on to that first place position? Fisher's been looking for a good result this weekend and has just set the fastest lap of the race as well. The track is drying up. Everyone's on the wet tyres, and there is traffic to navigate here, so it's going to be a tough job for Fisher to continue this defence. As you can already see it in front, the M2 Cup cars are already being closed in on. Boardman, though, getting a good exit out of the corner, not going to be enough to catch up to Fisher, because Fisher has given themselves a huge advantage through Maggots and Beckett's there. That will help them to keep the lead as they go down the hanger straight here. Boardman getting ever so close to the rear of the M2. I think maybe they were wondering if they could sneak around the other side and have the inside line on Fisher as they come up through the corner here, but Boardman still has not closed that gap enough. They're going to want to get this a lot tighter if they want to compete for the lead in the final few corners.
Yeah, that could be Mika Hakkinen and Spa vibes there, going using the back marker to sort of separate themselves between Michael Schumacher and making the move around that way. And it looks very reminiscent of that move there from Boardman, but not able to really make it happen. But getting a bit of a slipstream from the M2 anyway. Speaking of slipstream, pulling back into a Fisher. More cup cars, I believe that is the cup car of, that's Tom Bryant in the 42 up ahead there. So will the leaders of the M2 class be able to hold up the GT4s, but it looks like they might not need to. Bobbin pulling up alongside, going down into the loop, getting a later apex. Is it going to be enough to get the exit going down, and we have to take a later line into the second half of the loop, and that might give Boardman the run down towards Brookland. It depends. They've lost time on the run to Aintree, so it's looking very, very comfortable there for Fisher in the closing stages of this race.
Down the Wellington straight as we approach Brooklands. Fisher is still leading this race as this is Tom Bryant. They're now getting ever so close to coming into the final corner here. Boardman closed the gap massively, but Tom Bryant still lurking on the inside, causing all of the problem for the GT4s fighting for the winners. Tom is pushing Boardman absolutely out to the limit of the track there. Fisher will cross the line in race 2 to take the finish in first place at Silverstone. Boardman flashing their lights will have to settle for second. Borodai is going to cross the line in third place as well, although they are only just managing to make it to the line because those to the front were putting in some really fast laps. Those are your top 3, Fisher, Boardman and Borodai here in race 2.
No, Borodai keeping things very consistent throughout both races here today and picking up a double podium for it. And it goes to show that outright pace is not the be-all and end-all. Speaking of outright pace not being the be-all and end-all, as we mentioned earlier, here's Adam Carlisle. coming around with the with the wolf emoji on the side of the car. They got to admit that's actually pretty damn cute. Coming through across the line to pick up second place in class, flashing the lights. They'll be very happy with that one. To pick up second, and Lilith very close behind, picking up P3 for silver.
Yeah, I mean, that's just an amazing finish for those three. Although Lilith's going to have a huge penalty here, which means Goat will actually probably end up getting that P3 position, because I don't think they're 60 seconds behind. They're absolutely
Oh,
not. So
then
she's Lilith.
they didn't serve the stop go penalty then. The 30 seconds.
Oh,
So
no, that would have taken ages. Lilith took the 60 seconds there because it was simply much quicker than going into the pits and stopping for 30 seconds. But it does mean that Goat is going to get promoted onto that podium place in the silver. Tom Bryant coming home in second. They don't even get a lap to fight off Healy. Now that's why they were fighting Fisher. It's because they wanted to cross the line before. It wasn't going to happen, but they wanted to cross the line before Fisher. As Dom Healy will take home the victory no matter what here for the M2 Cup cars. Tom Bryant will have to settle for second, but they'll be happy with that. And Marco Ripper will take third place, putting them at the top of the standings in their championship fight. Marshall will cross the line in first place and will be the only AM car to finish in the M2 Cup. Those are the results for the race 2 on the board right now. And I've got to say, Austin, that was fairly chaotic towards the end there. A lot has happened, and drive-throughs yet again playing a huge part in how the race finishes.
Yeah, just genuine small mistakes really kind of changing up the order. Verstappen, I think, looking for at least the podium to kind of maintain the spot in the championship, or to at least kind of sort of damage control as much as possible. Making those mistakes, picking up that drive-through, and paying the price for it ultimately. Kudos to Fisher and Boardman for not picking up the drive-throughs either, because with how hard those guys are pushing, you can guarantee they had at least 1 or 2 track warnings. So that could have gone, well, really just about any way in the final laps of chaos.
Well, here are your standings after the race. Well, not standings, sorry. Here are the results of race 2 here today. Fisher came first place, Boardman in second, and Borodai rounded out the podium. Eraser was in fourth, Bart came home in fifth. They had a huge gap down to their nearest competitor in class. Of course, that means that Bart came first place in the silver split, which meant that Carlisle was second in the silver split, and Goat ended up coming third after Lilith served a 60-second penalty, which was taken for not having taken the stop and go early on. Dom Healy came first place both races here today in the M2 Cup car. Bryant came second and Ripper came third. Those are the finishing results for race 2 on your screen right now. And Foch actually decided to show up at some point, never finished the race, but did decide to show up at some point to put themselves on the board there. I think they'll probably be back next week to put in another great result on that KTM. Well, it's now time to mention the partners who help to make all of these races possible. We have racedepartment.com. They are your source of sim racing news and mods. AK Informatica provide our server solutions. Driver61.com. You can get 25% off your driver coaching by using our discount code. The link is in the description. You can redeem it by going to driver61.com, and they can really help you to improve your driving in sim racing. Fanatec are your one-stop shop for the best sim racing equipment on the market. You can use our affiliate link in the description. It won't cost you anything, and it helps us out with our server costs. And simracing.gp, if you're tired of the public lobby, if you love the racing that you see on these Thursdays and our other days in the RCI Championship, then you can join simracing.gp. They are a quality community-based sim racing group that you can join today. It's all completely free, and you can just hop into a race straight away. Wow. That, I've got to say, Austin, this has been a brilliant championship so far, and I'm sad to say I won't be joining you next week at the Nürburgring. That will be taken, I believe, by Jesse Lee and you as well. But after today's race, that was very exciting, and I've got to say, we've had some brilliant racing in these last couple of races, haven't we?
We really have. I mean, obviously, I wasn't here for the opening round of this championship, but from Paul Ricard onwards, I mean, from what I have seen, from what I've shared with you here in the booth here, Tim, it's been phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. For every single race, it's not been a disappointment, and I come away from each of these races kind of a little upset because I just want a little bit more action. Because it feels like it's over way too soon, and it's been some amazing racing these past couple of weeks.
It's been brilliant. I've got to say, as far as the championships go, the standard of driving from all of these drivers has improved so much, and it's just amazing to see them batting out. We will not be back tomorrow with Friday GT3. We're still on the break for that. Although, if you go to our website, racerci.com, you may see that there's a little championship planned out for Fridays that involves the new American circuits that were released in the DLC. You can go and sign up for that today if you want to be involved in the racing. Night Owl will be back on July the 2nd. That's this weekend. That will be hosted, I believe, by Ted on the broadcast, Jesse on the comms as well. But that will come after the qualifying for our World Tour race, which, I can't remember. I think it's Zolder. We've got the Zolder qualifying. That is, of course, a Super Bowl qualifying session. That is, of course, Ted and Jesse again on the broadcast. They've got a long night on Saturday, but it's a Super Bowl qualifying, which means drivers get, I believe, 30 minutes to set the best lap time possible. The top 10 then advance to Super Bowl, and they get one lap, set the best time they possibly can, and that will determine the order of the top 10 at Zolder. And then we won't be back until Thursday next week, where we will have the final round of the Thursday Championship. GT4s, BMW M2 cars, all out on track at the same time. Jesse Lee will be here, Ted Edwards and Austin, as they all take to see what happens in the final round. And I'm happy to say, you'll be off to the Nürburgring.
Yeah, I mean, what a place! What a place to enter. A lot of history, great opportunities for racing, especially in these cars. You know, they can fight. We've seen it today. We've seen it the past couple of weeks. They can fight very close, and the Nürburgring, a great arena for that to happen.
Well, I wish you the best of luck next week. Like I said, unfortunately, I will not be here to witness it. This was my final Thursday Championship race, but I've got to say it's been an absolute pleasure to have commentated this one with you, Austin. You've done absolutely brilliantly, and I can't wait to see what you do next week. I will be tuning in to watch throughout the race. You guys in chat, you've been brilliant as well, and I hope you all join next race as well, and for the future championships too. Remember, if you want to get notifications whenever we go live, you can hit the bell icon, and that will tell you whenever we're about to go live with a race. You can also subscribe to view all of our previous races, and hit that like if you've enjoyed today's race, because I know I have. But before we go today, Austin, is there anything else you want to say just about the race in general, or just, about the championship, with how things have been going so far?
I mean, as you said earlier in the race, you know, there's 4 championships up for grabs here across 2 classes of car and 4 classes of driver. You know, there's a lot to play for a lot of these drivers. But I think the one thing I do want to say, just to kind of make it known to everyone, is I'm going to miss you, Tim. It's been, you know, it's been fun with me as well. It's been fun with you. It's been a lot of fun here in the box, and having someone to share this experience with, along with everyone watching at home as well. It's felt less like commentating and more like watching a race with friends. So I want to thank everyone and yourself for that, Tim, and thank you for having me along.
Well, it's been absolutely brilliant commentating with you, and like I said, I can't wait to find out what happens next week. We've had such a good championship here on the Thursday, and it's going to come down to the wire, of course. Verstappen had a huge lead, definitely is not going to have that bigger lead as we go into the final race here. Well, that's all we have time for today, everybody. We'll see you all on Saturday, hopefully, for the qualifying for Zolder. Good night.